Come on. I think that's probably Elaine that's on, right? So welcome this evening. Let me get my phone turned on so that it won't turn off on me. There we go. Here we are. Okay. Prop it up here now. It's all. Where's Dottie? Get up here. Come on. Come on. Well, come on. You are such a huge dog. You are. You are such a huge dog. Say hi to everybody. Say hi to everybody. Are you a good dog? No, I don't need kisses. No kisses tonight. So I don't know about you, but I was mowing the lawn today. Not a trivial task out there on the Latham homestead. So, you let your sister up? You let your sister up once you get down. Get down. Oh, you can do it. I know I got just a tiny lap for such a big dog. Why don't you get down? Go on. Get. Dash on. Whoa, you just pop right up there. Yep. I think this is the worst year for my allergies. I've just been, I can't believe it. And maybe it's just because I'm more aware of what's going on and that I don't, if I get to a store or something like that, I don't dare cough or sneeze or anything. Now, the really funny thing is it's not this one, but it's the other one. If I sneeze, Dottie will come over and try to crawl in my lap, which is hilariously. Hey, Carol, how you doing? Hey, Elaine. Which is hilariously funny. So I was out on the lawnmower and allergies, and I sneezed, and here came Dottie, and she was looking to crawl in my lap, but that lawnmower was just too loud. So they go hide in the shed when I'm mowing because it's not loud, and it's out of the sun, so they're not, they do have a lot of black on them. They're not they're not overheating or anything like that. I don't, no kisses. No, I don't need that. So anyway, yeah, it was kind of a fun day. Things are looking good out there. The orchard is coming along nicely. We actually did some, Teresa and I, we've never done it before. We actually did some tree grafting yesterday, and we'll see. It's probably going to take a couple, 3 months to figure out whether we killed them all or something. But we went up to her mom's former place, and we got some king apples and some Wolf River apples. So, okay, get down. Get down. You can do it. There you go. And we're trying to graft those. And it's a process. And I figure we did a dozen plants last night. And then she got some kiwis because her mother grew kiwis, so she got some kiwi cuttings, and she's supposed to be trying to root those. So Teresa, if you're listening, I put some screen some fiberglass mesh in that wheelbarrow next to the sand, and that's to put in the bottom of those pots so the sand won't run out. So you can cut it up in whatever shape you want and then pour sand in there. And it will hold the sand and not let it out. It will drain pretty nicely. So I forgot to tell you that today, but I put that stuff out there. I'm hoping that our live stream experience will be a little more pleasant, other than me sitting here, a little more pleasant. I got a hold of, there we go. I got a hold of Rainier Connect, and they bumped us up a couple levels, and it just about doubled, well, a little over doubled our bill. But given what we're trying to do, I think it's well worth it. The board and I will talk this over when we finally get back together as a board. But I'm hoping that we're not going to see the fuzzing out, I guess it was the zombie look. Isn't that what, I think Tammy told me that I look like a zombie because my face was starting to turn black. And that's because all of the background is the same. And the software says, well, if it hasn't changed, then we'll continue we will continue to broadcast or to show what hasn't changed. But if it has changed, then we have to, 20 times, 32 times a second, we have to put up a new image in all of that. Well, everything else out here, right, was the same, and the bandwidth or the speed on the line wasn't keeping up with the face, and so it would turn black and get all evil looking and stuff like that. And somebody was saying, I think it was Teresa was telling me that I would cut out and there would be large pieces of me missing, because the line would be up and down. So anyway, all that to say, made some changes in our line speed, our bandwidth, and hopefully that will address some of the issues that we've had with the zombie effect. That just sounds kind of cool, the zombie effect. So if you continue to have problems, we're gonna address those issues fast as we can. I'm not sure, if it's your own personal line speed. I'm not sure what we're going to be able to do about it, but we'll try to fix all the issues that we can as quickly as we can. And this is just one step in the process. So Rainier Connect, we got them. And if you've talked to anybody, if you've called out to call centers or customer service or anything like that, everybody is slammed. And before it used to be bad. I hated to call for any kind of customer service. I mean, before it was bad. Now it's just awful. It out and out awful. And the Rainier Connect people, because they've just been bought out, or they just bought out. I forget which direction it went. So that's Sprint. What's the name of the system that they put up here in Tacoma? Anyway, they just bought it out, and so they're changing management and changing administration and all of that. And they were doing the billing before. Because we were going through Rainier Connect. So they were doing all the billing and all that, but now they've taken over the system, and so they're taking it in the in the breadbasket, as it were, double, because they've got all new administration and all of that, plus the effects of everybody wanting faster line speed or whatever for their own homes because virus. So it's one of those things, with Rainier Connect. I just laughed. I mean, the lady was Click Cable. Thank you. The lady was apologizing. I mean, she apologized to me 6 or 8 times, and I kept saying, no, it doesn't matter. I'm not angry or anything like that. We just need to get it fixed. So yeah, hopefully we have fixed a big piece of the puzzle. Okay, so as far as do check in if you would. I've got Carol, and I've got Elaine on, and an unknown third person. I don't know who that is, but do check in. If you've got prayer requests, then go on ahead and send them. I'm just going to chat for another minute or so. Mike B is back at home now. He's got a surgery scheduled for, I believe, so far, next Thursday. If they can get it in earlier, they're going to go for it. But they really couldn't keep him in the hospital until the surgery, because while he was sick, he wasn't that sick. I hope that makes sense. But he's home with Carol, and that's really a good thing. Do give them a call, check in with them. I've talked to Carol just about every day, every other day, something like that. And she's as upbeat and positive as she can be, but I'm telling you, she needs support. If somebody can just reach out to her and say, hey, Carol, besides me, hey, Carol, how's it going? Still praying for you, that type of thing. That's going to mean the world to her. Robin, they put Robin on a feeding tube because she hasn't been eating. I guess she's not hungry or something's going on and she's not eating. So that procedure happened today. She's still in the hospital, TG, I think the 5th floor. And it's one of those things that they're taking it on a day-to-day basis. They want to get her into a care facility to do rehab, get her up on her feet and get her moving in all of that. But they can't if she continues to have these relatively serious side effects. So there we have that. Sue is still on oxygen. Last I heard, I haven't talked to him in a while, but other people have. And so Sue and Bruce, if you could, Teresa's the unknown. If you could give her a call, pray with her, support her, just tell her you're thinking about her and you're praying for her and all that. That probably would mean the world to her also. And do keep Marty in your prayers. Now, I haven't heard from Marty and Allie it's been about 2.5 weeks now. I'm expecting that if anything serious is going on, they're going to give us a call and, keep us up to date and whatnot. One of the things I have been doing is that if there's something urgent, and I'm taking it on a case-by-case basis, if there's something urgent going on where people think that they may need to get a hold of me on a moment's notice or something like that, I've been sharing out my home phone. And the deal with that is you just keep calling until somebody answers, because very likely we're not in the house. We're outside doing something, but if you just keep trying, then you will eventually get through. I do not always put the cell phone on me, especially if I'm out working with equipment or something like that. I can't be distracted, where my hands or my my arms or legs are concerned. If I'm on a tractor, I'm working with a mill or a lathe or something like that. I can't be distracted, because if I put my hand in the wrong place, it'll just chew me up. So I don't, honestly, I don't bring a phone out with me, but I have been sharing out my home phone. If you need my home phone number, I'm more than willing to share it. There's 3 people in the house right now. Our son made it out here from Wisconsin. So there's 3 people in the house. Eventually somebody will answer that phone. If I'm in the house, I'll go for the phone. But Teresa works during the day. She's not always available. Sometimes she's in meetings or something like that. And so she can't answer it. And like I say, I may be outside doing something, but I will get to you. I will get back to you as soon as possible. Okay. I don't know if I said it, but I'm going to say it. Exodus beginning in chapter 10 tonight. We're closing in on the final plagues, the final tribulations that are going on in Egypt. And there's just some interesting dynamics that are happening here. It's going to be more of the same. Let's get real here, more of the same. But it's almost like a disease. It's almost like a virus. When you catch a cold, catch the flu or something like that, the first thing you notice is maybe there's a tickle in your throat, and then it starts to hurt, and then it travels down your trachea, and you start getting achy, and then it's in your lungs, and it just steadily gets worse and worse and worse. And that's what's going on with Egypt. It's almost like they caught a virus. Well, they did in a manner of speaking. The virus is God, and he's going to take them down. So let's start off with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we're here to study your word. We're here to look to you, to seek you out. We're here to understand your wisdom and to get your guidance in our lives. We want you to be in our lives. We want you to be active in our lives. And so, Lord, this is just a part of that active. Speak to us, protect us from harm, whether it's a virus or even spiritual harm. It's a sin. We ask that you protect us. And we ask that you give us your strength, not only in our bodies, but in our faith. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. So, Exodus chapter 10. And if I remember correctly, what have we got left? We've got locusts. We've got darkness. And then we've got the firstborn. So we're starting in on plague number 8. Yeah. Plague number 8. And as I mentioned a moment ago, it's going to be more of the same, but it's also a progression, that things get steadily worse, that God is bringing physical pressure to bear. He's bringing psychological pressure to bear. He's bringing spiritual pressure to bear. And it's going to have its impact on all of Egypt, but specifically on Pharaoh. Just as a side note, as I was reading through this, I was thinking, okay, is this going to be our last Bible study in Exodus? And actually, I want to take us until we get across the Red Sea. Okay, there's just some really interesting things going on with Moses, with all of Israel. We don't see much of Aaron yet, but also with Pharaoh and all of Egypt. There's there's some dynamics in there that we would be remiss if we ignored them. So we're going to at least get to the point where Miriam and all the girls do their dance. I'm not sure that I'm in for a victory lap, but we're going to try it on for size. We're going to get to that point, and then I'll decide, are we going to go beyond that? When we get into the wilderness experience, there's a whole new set of lessons, and it changes the dynamic that God has now got his people out of Egypt, and he's got them to himself in the backcountry, in the wilderness, and some of the stuff that they do. So we may go on. If you got any opinions on that, be sure and get a hold of me and tell me. So Exodus chapter 10, in verse 1, and the word of God reads, "Then the Lord said to Moses, go to Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants, that I may perform these signs of mine among them, and that you may tell in the hearing of your son and your grandson how I made a mockery of the Egyptians and how I performed my signs among them, that you may know that I am the Lord." I'm going to stop right there because there's a couple interesting points there. It made a mockery of the Egyptians. Clear down to the individual level, clear down through the cultural level, clear down through their spiritual or religious level, that God showed them for the truly horrendous fakes that they are. I had a discussion the other day with my son, and we were talking about some of the gender identity stuff that's going on around us, and some of the, I call it video game mentality that we see. And we started this video game mentality even before they had video games, because they did these games like Dungeons and Dragons, and you could get a character and you could turn that character, male, female, neutered, it didn't matter. You could turn that character into anything you wanted, because you could buy powers, or you could earn powers, or you could do this or that. And with a little luck of the draw, that would be a little luck of the dice, I believe. I've never played it. You could increase the strength of your character, on and on and on. So it was sort of a make-believe world, and then it transferred very nicely to video games, in which, for instance, Lara Croft. That's almost a seek and find type of game. You go out on a quest and you try to get stuff, in tombs, and that's why they call her Tomb Raider, and on and on and on. And you can be as strong as you want, and you can, you always have a chance to win, and on and on and on. And the point I was making with my son was that the next time we have, let's say, the Spanish flu, that was the flu from 1912, I believe, right after the end of, no, it was later, 1919, right after the end of World War I. And this flu just literally flew across the world, and over 100 million people were killed, okay? So the next time we have something like that in the world, in which a healthy percentage of the population is at risk, those that are not realistic, those that are in a make-believe world, like 57 genders or whatever else that you want to create within your own life, and that's okay to a point, but they're probably going to be the first ones that drop. because they don't believe in the science of the virus, for instance, or they don't think that it's going to affect them because they live in a different world or whatever. It's going to take them by surprise. It's going to take them down. It could be something as simple as an invasion in the country, whether it's our country or any other country, because this particular mentality has gone pretty much worldwide. And those that are strong and know who they are, they're probably going to do fine. Those that are not, they're going to go down very, very quickly. I believe it was Lenin used to call them useful idiots. Okay, they accomplished a certain thing within the Soviet system, and then I believe it was Joe Stalin came along and killed them all, the intelligentsia and all that, or put them in the gulags. And we're going to see that, okay? Maybe not in my lifetime, maybe not in the lifetime of my children, but if we continue on that particular trajectory, that particular arc, then what's going to happen is we're going to have a bunch of people that really have a very loose connection with reality. And when they do, reality is going to reach out and bite them, okay? Now let's get back to what I was talking about here. How I made a mockery of the Egyptians, how God made a mockery of the Egyptians, because they had a very loose connection with reality as far as their gods or godettes were concerned. They believed, there was a god in the river, and there was a god of flies, and there was a god of dogs, and a god of, it was very animistic little gods and godettes running around everywhere. In here in North America, we have a fair amount of that. We have conclaves of Wiccan and witches and all of that, warlocks. As a matter of fact, the national headquarters for Wiccans, witches, and warlocks used to be in Federal Way. I don't know if they still claim that or not. So it's fairly close. Very tentative connection with reality. And when you get there, then pretty soon your own personal, I can make my reality anything I want. Well, yeah, you can, until the real comes along and bites you. And this is what God did with the Egyptians. And what we would like to prevent is people, making the type of reality that excludes God. And this is what the Egyptians were doing. In verse 3, it says, Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and said to him, Thus saith the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, how long will you refuse to humble yourself before me? Let my people go, that they may serve me. For if you refuse to let my people go, now, right, we're in this formula. We've seen it 7 other times. Okay. For if you refuse to let my people go, behold, tomorrow I will bring locusts into your territory, and they will cover the surface of the land so that no one will be able to see the land. They will also eat the rest of what has escaped. Remember, the hail and the flies or the insects or whatever had pretty much decimated everything. The rest of what had escaped, what is left to you from the hail, there we go, and they will eat every tree which sprouts for you out of the field. Now, occasionally Teresa has been telling me, she sort of has been following this in Africa, that there's these swarms of locusts. And as I understand it, they can do their crop dusting and try to kill them off and all that, but there's this little problem with national borders, and that aircraft are not allowed to fly over the national borders. And so if the locust swarm is going in the right direction, it escapes into the next country over, and there's some of them left, and they'll multiply again and cause just as big a problem when they come back.
Verse 6 says, then your houses shall be filled when I was much younger, I made the claim, and I think it's still mostly true. There's certain things for which it's not true anymore, but I'd eat about anything. And when I was in high school, I had a friend who, as a gag, bought some chocolate-covered grasshoppers. Fried grasshoppers are deep fat fried and then covered in chocolate. And so they were munchy, sort of a crunchy chocolate. I don't know that the grasshopper itself had much in the way of flavor. Then your houses shall be filled. Well, kids, they're not going to have anything else to eat. They've lost all their cattle, right? They died a few plagues back. All of their crops are going to get munched here very, very shortly, and there's not going to be anything left to eat. You better start bagging up locusts and processing them as fast as you can, because you may be on a high protein diet for some number of months until you can grow some crops again. Then your houses shall be filled, and the houses of all your servants, and the houses of all the Egyptians, something which neither your fathers nor your grandfathers have seen, from the day that they came upon the earth until this day. And he turned and went out from Pharaoh. Now, this next part, I think, is really important, because we've gone through 7 plagues. The locusts will be number 8. Okay, 7 plagues. The formula has been fairly consistent. Moses goes to Pharaoh, says, let my people go. If you don't, then this will happen. And we get this next incremental version of destruction going up against Egypt. And Egypt taking the punch, taking the body blow, as it were, and sort of shrugging it off, because, they're obviously a very large country, a very powerful country at that time. So they shrug it off. Okay, we can get through this, and we'll be better, we'll be stronger when we come out the other side. Well, here is where it starts changing. In verse 7, it says, Pharaoh's servants said to him, how long will this man be a snare to us? Let the Israelites go, that they may serve the Lord their God. Do you not realize that Egypt is destroyed? So I preached on this on Sunday. I think I spoke about it also. Damage, not only to yourself, but to everybody else around you. And the illustration I used was this article I read on the collateral damage from sheltering in place. And there we go. And, innumerable people, millions of people have been thrown into, I'm going to say abject poverty. Millions of people have lost their jobs, and not just in this country. I'm talking worldwide. And this is a situation in which people, they work one day, they get to eat one day. They work the next day, they get to eat that day. They work the next day, they get to eat that day. In many of the parables that Jesus told, you see the same attribute, you see the same thing going on, that people, the business people or the farmers are told not to withhold the payment of a person until the next day, because guess what? That's how they're going to eat. They're going to go buy a little food, and they're going to be able to eat. So they're going to be able to eat a loaf of bread and maybe some little chunk of meat or something like that. And that's it for the day, So a day's work was a day's food for them. Let the men go, that they may serve the Lord their God. Do you not realize that Egypt is destroyed? It's this hardness of heart that we're seeing right now. And as I was coming over to church this afternoon, I kept hearing, these stories, and by kept hearing, it was 2 or 3 different stories about people that are fed up and they're just going to open up their shops. So they're just going to go back to work. They don't have any food left. They don't have any money left. They're going to lose their business if they don't go back to work. They're going to, it's like the barber in Michigan. And it was a week ago Monday, he opened up his shop, and the Michigan State Police came in and cited him and told him to close up, and he refused. He says, I'm not going to close unless they drag me off in handcuffs or Jesus comes. Okay, I like his attitude. Okay, I like that attitude until Jesus comes. And then I'll probably not do any more work because, rapture. But they kept pushing him, and he lawyered up. And the lawyer, I'm sorry. The state went to court to get an injunction against the guy and to force him to close. And the judge says, no way. What you're asking is illegal. What you're claiming has no basis. There's no foundation there. Give me a law to back it up with. Give me a law to back it up with, and I could enforce it. But since there's no law, you guys are out. I guess you could say a hissy fit. That's one of my favorite sayings. They're having a hissy fit because now this judge is endangering everybody. Well, you know what? People are going to stay home if they want to stay home, and they have no appetite for catching this new disease. By the way, it's not a flu; it's a blood clotting type of disease, which is pretty scary in and of itself. But there's no law, at least in Michigan, that says if the governor orders you to stay at home, you have to stay at home. And the judge pointed this out to him, that there's no law there, that you've got to have a specific law that says this is what it is and this is how it's going to work. And so he kicked it out. Okay. Do you not realize that Egypt is destroyed? And we get there with that hardness of heart. Now, mind you, the virus that's running around may be much, much worse might have been much, much worse if we didn't all shelter in place. I can agree with that. Okay, I'm not going to disagree with that. As a matter of fact, our church was one of the first churches in this area to go on ahead and close down. And we just said, it's not worth the risk. I, as a pastor, don't want to be the author of any of my congregation getting sick from this disease and dying. And, oh, by the way, before they do, spreading it around the rest of the country to close down. And then, of course, the governor came along and said, well, no, you have to close down. So when we had our worship on Sunday, after the fact, I didn't know, and we felt that we were operating under phase 1 guidelines, and I still think we did. But it turns out that for churches, the only thing they're allowed to do is worship in their cars. I don't think that's legal. Okay. In point of fact, I was talking to Carol B. today, and telling her, on Sunday, it looks like rain. If you guys have a different opinion on that, please get a hold of me. I want to hear some input on that. But if all I'm going to do is get people out there and get them rained on Sunday, we're probably not going to do anything. Okay, so sort of far afield, but hardness of heart can force us to make some really bad decisions. Some really, what did I say on Sunday? Stuck on stupid decisions. And in verse 8, it says, so Moses and Aaron were brought back to Pharaoh. Okay, so Remember, his wise men, his magicians, his servants had argued with Pharaoh. And the last that we heard, do you not realize that Egypt is destroyed? So Pharaoh had sort of let's call it a temporary change of heart. So Moses and Aaron were brought back to Pharaoh, and he said to them, go serve the Lord your God. Who are the ones that are going? Now, we've been through this. Moses was pretty clear with Pharaoh that everybody, we're going to pack up everything and we're going to get out. And when we're done, our livestock and all that, okay? But here, Pharaoh it's like a sore tooth. He's getting his tongue into it yet one more time. Who are the ones that are going? And Moses said, we shall go with our young and with our old and with our sons and our daughters, with our flocks and our herds we shall go, for we must hold a feast to the Lord. Then Pharaoh said to them, thus may the Lord be with you, if ever I let you and your little ones go. That's a refusal, by the way. Take heed, for evil is in your mind. And then in verse 11 it says, not so, go now the men among you, and this is still Pharaoh. Yeah, this is still Pharaoh. He says, not so. It used to be a fun thing, especially in the TV sitcoms and stuff like that. I really like this place. Not, okay, this is what Pharaoh's doing. Not so. Go now, the men among you, and serve the Lord, for that is what you desire. Or, no, still parents. Even if your kids grow up and leave home, you're still parents. But there was a certain thing with our kids that I noticed, that you start talking to your child about why they couldn't do something. And what you're trying to do is explain to them. You're trying to be nice. You're trying to explain to them that, no, you can't go out with your friends. You're too young for that. We don't know who the driver is, that type of thing, whatever the situation is. But the child sees it as a negotiation, that they start working at it from the outside edges, and then, it's Tommy, and Tommy's a really good driver, and on and on. And eventually you have to say, look, this isn't and you have to wonder if Pharaoh was in the negotiation, and you see this. I mean, the boundaries are quite clear. The boundaries are, at any point, you need to let us go, and we're going to pick up everything that we nothing said about we're going to come back, but everything said we're going to pick up and we're going to leave, and this is what we expect to do while we're out. We're going to have a feast. We're going to have sacrifices to the Lord. That's as far as it goes. And Pharaoh's saying, well, who? I mean, surely only the men, because if they leave their wives, their women, and their little ones, of course they have some sort of tie that they have to come back for. If they leave their livestock, there's something to come back for, so they're likely to come back. If they leave their little ones, with enough nannies to keep after them, then there's something to come back for. Pharaoh's in a negotiation want to. So in the boundaries for God are firm. And over the land of Egypt for the locusts, that they may come up on the land of Egypt and eat every plant of the land, even all that the hail has left. You remember, we had that big crop destroyer, and it took out 2/3 of their crops. The 1/3 that was left over probably hadn't sprouted yet, and it was now up. We don't know how long between the plagues. I mean, in these chapters in Exodus, they just come and destroy it. There's no doubt about it that the damage is so severe, so terrible, that, The east wind brought the locusts, and the locusts came up over all the land of Egypt and settled in all the territory of Egypt. They were very numerous. There had never been so many locusts, nor would there be so many again. Given what we're hearing about now as far as locusts, that's got to be a lot of locusts that were going on back then. Okay. Never seen that many again. Verse 15 says, for they covered the surface of the whole land. Now, but there's an intense center to it, and it sort of fuzzes out around the edges, and typically it's long, so the wind's blowing them in a particular direction, and some of them get there first much sooner than Egypt. So the land was darkened, and they ate every plant of the land and all the fruit of the trees that the hail had left. Thus nothing green was left on tree or plant of the field through all the land of Egypt. Now, I remember reading locusts from high school, I think. And one of the things that they noted, or the bark off of trees, so they'll kill a tree, they won't just defoliate it, they'll take it down to their wood. They'll eat cloth, whether it's woven from flax or something like that, or it's woven from wool. You could, I suppose you could eat back. They're eating you, you eat them. Just a joke. Going for the total kill. Everything green is going to be gone. Verse 16. Okay, they've already told him that his country has been destroyed. Already seven plagues, and he's destroyed them, and they're on their eighth now with the locust. And so, remove this death from me. And they've been approaching it pretty slowly, I guess. I don't know what else to say about it. They've come at it sort of in a very structured way, very stately way, as it were. But it's still destruction. It's still God going to win out over Egypt. And so Moses went out from Pharaoh, but the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not let the sons of Israel go. Well, I've been known to use Uncle Zeke as sort of this example, a bad example, as it were, about things that you don't want to be doing and stuff like that. I don't have an Uncle Zeke. I have an uncle that would substitute for Zeke just fine. He's no longer with us, which I consider, personally, and it's a sad thing that it's a favor to the world. He truly was a bad apple. Okay, but one of the characteristics of Uncle Zeke was, it's a straw man argument, but as I make him out to be, is he just doesn't learn. All these bad things happen, and he just, from his mistakes, he's never going to learn. He's sort of stuck in his ways, and he's never going to get out of it. And this is Pharaoh displaying a whole lot of Uncle Zeke characteristics that they had all of these really startling things going on in their lives, and they especially his advisors, his wise men, his magicians, all were able to tell him this is a spiritual aspect. This is the finger of God in this. Okay. This is something that you don't want to mess with. This is something that you have destroyed because of what you've done. You have destroyed the country. Okay. But God was depending upon Uncle Zeke to decision was going to mess up yet one more time until there were no more times to mess up. And I think this is the point of one of the points of the plague story, this plague cycle, to walk away from him, to to just really oppose him. God's going to keep trying with you until you die, and then it's too late. That's not always true. That's not always true. I mean, they at the end, and it would have been best had the individual said, yeah, I understand, I'm opposing God, and I don't want to do that. By the way, the knocking on the door there is my dog knocking on the floor. But, you don't want to oppose God. You don't want to find yourself in that position. And Pharaoh, Uncle Zeke, is just not getting it. Okay? World. The murrain, the cattle disease. Yeah, it's a disease. Maybe it's mad cow disease or something like that. Hoof and mouth, something like that. The mites, those natural causes. You understand now. They coming on suddenly and repeatedly striking one country, that being Egypt, time after time after time, would give you a sense that maybe you need to take a beat and think through this and try something different, because whatever you're doing isn't working out. Okay. But you can still, turning to blood, you can still say, well, they're natural causes, this and that. And we get to this one and there isn't. Okay. In the sky, that everything turned black. Okay. But it's not saying that. A dark can do anything you want. But we look at that, and because if the earth were to stop suddenly, those oceans would keep moving, supposedly. So how did he do it? Well, it's God. That's how he did it. And we don't have to understand the mechanics, or even, we don't even have to be able to come up with a scenario that works well. If we trust in God and understand that he's the one enacting it, then we can see that it would be done. Okay. But my point being that we went from the natural occurrences to the supernatural, and this is the penultimate plague, the next to the last, right? And so this is the one that should be telling Pharaoh in no uncertain terms that God is in this, that there is no way that the sun is going to stop for them. There is no way that it would be blocked and give out darkness except by supernatural means. Verse 23 says, they did not see one another, nor did anyone rise from his place for 3 days, but all the sons of Israel had light in their dwellings. Then Pharaoh called to Moses and said, go serve the Lord, only let your flocks and your herds be detained. We're still negotiating. Even your little ones may go with you. Verse 25 says, but Moses said, you must also let us have sacrifices and burnt offerings, that we may sacrifice them to the Lord our God. Therefore our livestock too shall go with us. Not a hoof shall be left behind, for we shall take some of them to serve the Lord our God. And until we arrive there, now we've heard this part before, but until we arrive there, we ourselves do not know with what we shall serve the Lord. Pharaoh's heard this before. He heard this particular part of it, and it's one of those where you understand that he wants to retain power, he wants to retain authority, he wants some assurance that they're going to go out and they're going to do their holiday and all of that, but they're also going to come back because they've got too much vested in ever recoup some of his losses as a result if they leave their livestock, that type of thing. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he was not willing to let them go. Then Pharaoh said to him, "Get away from me, beware, do not see my face again, for in the day you see my face, you shall die." And Moses said, "You are right, I shall never see your face again." There was a dance that guys used to dance in junior high and high school. And it was almost the rooster dance, little roosters. If you've been around chickens, you know that rooster dance. They sort of strut and they make startling moves, and they do this and that, and they're working themselves into a fight. And young boys and young men do this also, that they work themselves up. And, I can beat you, and I can beat your father, and I can beat your brothers, and whatever. And your mother wears army boots and whatnot. I don't know. I think my mom would like army boots if she had some. But this is what we're seeing here, right? Pharaoh says, "Get away from me. Do not see my face again." And Moses says, "You're right. I'm not going to see your face again. In your eye," type of thing. And this is pretty much the end of their communications. Now we're going to see kind of a weird thing going on, okay, in chapter 11. And when I read it, I thought, what's going on here? Where is, because let me put it this way. Moses said, Pharaoh said, "Don't see me again. You're going to die if you do." Moses said, "You're right. I'm never going to see you again." But we're going to see something that sort of makes us, I'm trying to find it real quick. In verse 8. Verse 8 says, at the tail end of verse 8 in chapter 11, he says, "And he went out from Pharaoh in hot anger." Something's weird about that statement, and I'm not quite sure the mechanics of the interaction between Pharaoh and Moses, because at the end of chapter 10, we see that they pretty well parted company. If you see me again, if you see my face again, you're dead. You're dead. I've told that to dog owners. You can feed the dog, you can keep feeding it, but it's dead. You might as well put it down right now, especially when they've been eating our baby goats. So I'm sort of stumped. I went through it and I looked at it and I thought, I'm not quite sure what that means, but let's get into it. In chapter 11, verse 1, it says, "Now the Lord said to Moses, 'One more plague I will bring on Pharaoh and on Egypt, and after that he will let you go from here. And when he lets you go, he will surely drive you out from here completely.'" Now, one of the things I've maintained all along as we've been going through this is that God is prepping Egypt to push Israel out. and God is prepping the Hebrews to make a run for it at the correct time. And he's like a master chef. He's cooking everything so that it all comes out and is all ready at the exact right time. Okay? And so God is working the situation from both ends to the extent that the Hebrews are going to be just raring to go. They're almost from fear, kind of excitement, but also from fear. They're going to want to get out of there. But the Egyptians are going to want them to get out of there, and we'll see that in chapter 12 next week, I think. The Egyptians are going to want them to get out of there because they're afraid that if the Hebrews stay much longer, that they personally will die. That's not a bad thought. That's actually a very mature, well-considered thought, considering what's been happening with Egypt through all of this. I mean, things got more serious as we've gone along, and now we're at the point where it's getting downright deadly, okay? When he lets you go, he will surely drive you out from here completely. He's going to be excited. Pharaoh's going to be excited. The Egyptians are going to be excited. They're going to be nervous. They're going to be beseeching the Hebrews to get out. Just go away. Stop this. We're tired of people dying. We're tired of destruction. Just get away from us, okay? In verse 2, it says, "Speak now in the hearing of the people." Now, I'm assuming this is the Hebrews. "In the hearing of the people, that each man ask his neighbor, and each woman from her neighbor for articles of silver and articles of gold." And the Lord gave the people, through the Bible reading is now 2 Samuel, I think last night it was chapter 15 and 16, I believe. They go into a city, they kill everything that breathes, and they plunder it. They take all the gold, all the silver, all the brass, the bronze, the copper, any valuable minerals, jewels and stuff like that. They take cloth or clothing or shoes or whatever. They plunder the city and they'll strip it bare, and then they'll march off with their plunder. Okay, this is what Israel is going to do to Egypt before it leaves. It's going to plunder the country. They're going to walk off with gold and silver. They're going to walk off with valuables. They're going to go away much enriched. Now, part of the motivation for the Egyptians, I'm sure, is fear. Look, let's just pay them to get out of here. I'm afraid after this last plague, I'm afraid that I'm next. Isn't that what we're seeing with the coronavirus, with the COVID-19? I'm afraid that I'm next. And if I get it, am I going to be able to fight it off, or am I going to be just yet another statistic as far as, deaths? And none of us know that answer. But the Egyptians, are probably thinking along those lines, look, if we just pay them to get out of here, maybe they'll go. So that kind of favor in their side, okay? And Moses said, this is verse 4, "Thus saith the Lord, about midnight I am going out into the midst of Egypt, and and all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die." Now, it doesn't say firstborn male. Let me look and make sure I'm correct on that. In all the firstborn, Bekor, firstborn, it does not look to have a gender on it. Okay, so all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die. So it'd be male or female. So if you were the oldest daughter and the firstborn, gone. If you're the oldest son and firstborn, gone. So, it could be a mom and a child. It could be the dad and the mom and a child. It could be, because all three of them were firstborn, or it could be on and on and on. It could be the eldest cow that you have from a particular, or eldest cow, cattle, a particular cow that you have, that kind of firstborn. It could be the eldest lamb. And so, if you had 10 sheep and they all had lambs, then all of them are gone. Okay. And the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die from the firstborn of the Pharaoh. Now that's important, right? The firstborn of Pharaoh in everything, and we're going to see this next week, I believe. In everything that God did to Egypt spiritually, he destroyed their gods and godettes. And we're going to see that we're not going to see it tonight. We're going to see it next week. He destroyed their gods and godettes. He took them down. He killed them. He showed them what they really were not. This is that reality check I was talking about earlier, that, their reality, we can make any gods or goddess we want. Well, you can, but the reality of the situation is that there's only one God, and he's the creator of the entire universe. You probably should, to quote a particular evangelist, you probably should figure out what he wants and abide by it. Okay, Kent Hovind. And when you look at it from that viewpoint, you're looking at the real, and they weren't. And so when God went after the firstborn specifically, first off, it was to punish all of Egypt for Pharaoh's bad decisions, but it was also to show all of Egypt that Pharaoh really isn't God. You don't have to get much deeper than that he's not God. He's just a man. His son was just a boy. Okay. And God's going to take him down. So all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on his throne, even to the firstborn of the slave girl who is behind the millstones, all the firstborn of the cattle as well. Moreover, there shall be a great cry in all the land of Egypt, such as there has not been before, and such as shall never be again. Verse 7, but against any of the sons of Israel, a dog will not even bark, whether against man or beast, that you may understand how the Lord makes a distinction between Egypt and Israel. Okay, God is doing what he's doing for a purpose. He's making a point, not only, and you could prove this by looking in the Bible, not only with Egypt, but with the sons of Israel, that he will bring up the image